She went under the wheels.
How affected.
Welcome to Under the Wheels. I'm Matthew.
I'm Gabe.
And today we're going to talk about two movies, The Irishman and Knives Out, but I guess a caveat about this episode.
Yeah, I mean, we're recording this the same day as we recorded the Ford v Ferrari, so there's not much to catch up on in terms of like, oh, what have you seen lately? So we're not going to waste, 45 minutes talking about movies that you had no idea that we were going to be talking about. We're just going to get right to the point. You don't have to hear me talk about Ugetsu again.
No Honey Boy spoilers in this one. I've not seen it, so it's not important. But yeah, so recorded on the same day, and the reason why we had to record it separately is because Gabe and I had seen The Irishman and Knives Out, and Mike hadn't seen it yet. So in order to spare our guest star from us completely spoiling both movies, we decided to give him a mercy kill and just kick him off the program.
Exactly.
So we're going to start by talking about The Irishman and then move to Knives Out. And I guess the first thing, the way we preface all of these is with our rating. Now, Gabe, would you like to start with our rating, or do you want to lead in, or should we build up to it?
I'll just lead with my rating. I think
Okay.
The Irishman is a... I don't quite know what my rating is.
I've got a rating for you.
For me, it's low, shiny, and chrome, I would say.
I think I'll go with a low, shiny, and chrome as well. Yeah, I'll go with a low, shiny, and chrome. Because it seems to have like almost the opposite effect of Ford v Ferrari, where like the plot could be a lot tighter, but the execution is 100% Scorsese. It's like all special sauce. But I'll give it a low, shiny, and chrome because it is Scorsese and because it feels like the movie Ron from Kurosawa, where a lot of people, when they comment on it, they're like, oh, this is an old man's movie. Like, this was a movie made by someone in the twilight years of their life. Maybe for the wrong reasons, The Irishman feels like an old man movie.
Well, it feels like a movie made by someone in the twilight years of their life, but I mean, Jesus. Scorsese's been in the twilight years for 20 years now. So, he's always been old. He's just getting a little older.
Yeah, all of the black has finally gone out of his hair. Now it's just white.
That was a while ago, too.
I think he used to have a black in his beard, but now he's just gone clean shaven. No black on my face, just like in my movies.
That could be interpreted the wrong way, Matt. So The Irishman's weird just because it's 3.5 hours. I don't think it earns that 3.5 hours, but like I don't know where you would cut it either.
How about that opening shot?
Well, it's a movie about aging, so I think rubbing your face and how old everybody is very thematically relevant. And, I guess the length, too. Scorsese likes to make really long movies, which I get. I think the length is kind of the same case as The Wolf of Wall Street. Wolf of Wall Street is about excess. The length of the movie is excessive. Mm-hmm. This movie is about being old as fuck. So the movie's really, really long because this person's life has been really, really long. The execution is great. It's very Scorsese. I like the judicious use of title cards. Or not necessarily title cards, but like explanatory graphics. Like, this is this person, this is how he died.
Yes.
Because it's like, everyone that Frank Sheeran, spoiler alert, Frank Sheeran is the only person he outlives all the other characters in the movie, one way or another,
Right. Hey, he outlives his own narration. He outlives his own voiceover narration.
Huh?
Yeah, because he stops narrating the movie near the end, and it's
that's
him
true.
It's just him as an old man.
Old. Yeah. It's good. It's just doesn't. I don't know. It doesn't have that oomph or that captivating factor that would make it a really brilliant, amazing, all-time great movie. That said, it's still really good. Everything in it does work, I think. Speaking of things that work surprisingly, the de-aging
was really good.
It's really good. You don't notice it that much. It's only like when Robert De Niro first shows up and he's de-aged, and his mouth moves weird. That's the only time it really sticks out as something being wrong. But after that, you kind of just learn to roll with it, and it fades into the back of your mind, and you're not so distracted by it. Well, that and when he beats up the guy at the store, and he's like 40-year-old face, 80-year-old body. Like his shoulders don't move, and he's winging these like really like shitty old man punches and kicks that are reminiscent of Sonny Corleone's like missing by a yard strikes in The Godfather.
The first Godfather. Yeah, it's like they got James Caan to play himself. The back thing was distracting to me for like the whole first half of the movie. Like the old man kind of got a hunched back, and then also, like, as a brief aside, do you remember, I know that you've tried to forget most of this movie, but do you remember in American Hustle when Robert De Niro ices that one guy with the gun?
What?
And it's like, yeah, in American Hustle there's like a moment where
I forgot Robert De Niro was even in that movie.
So
this is how many fucking movies I watch. I can't remember.
or you finally succeeded in forgetting American Hustle, which is kudos to you.
You know, I like some things in American Hustle. It's just David O. Russell's annoying.
Yeah, he is. And so in this scene, Robert De Niro like has a gun, and he does this like over exaggerated, like he's a kid trying to like shoot someone with a fake gun thing. And there's a little bit of that in The Irishman, which is like hard for me. Like it's always been hard for me to like palate that scene in American Hustle, because this is Robert De Niro. This is the guy who iced people super easily in Goodfellas and did it with such style. And then a little bit in this movie, but luckily not as much. But in that scene where he's beating the guy, no, not that scene. There's another scene where it's just like Robert De Niro forgot how to fire a gun. Like somewhere between his 60s and his 80s, he forgot how to fire a gun. It's really weird.
Well, I don't know if that's, maybe it's dementia, or maybe his joints need some WD-40.
It's too many Fokker movies. That's mine. He languished in comedy too long.
I guess. I mean, it's weird because, yeah, and his whole comedic career has been him playing a parody of himself. To which point, like, when he returns to drama, he is then a parody of himself.
He's a parody of all those characters he played in Goodfellas and Casino and everything like that.
Well, the interesting thing about him in this movie is, like, in a lot of his other movies, he's fairly competent, you know?
Yeah.
When he's the tough guy. But this is, I think, the first movie I've seen him in where he plays a dumb tough guy. Like, one who's not good with people, who's not in the know, who is good at the basics of killing people, but can't manage the mob connections, can't manage his relationships with people, isn't totally clear on what the big picture is in terms of what like Jimmy Hoffa's trying to do and what the mafia is trying to do. He just is kind of like, he's like a soldier in the sense that he shows up, some guy he respects tells him, hey, do this, and he's like, oh yeah, okay, I'll do that.
I agree. That's, to De Niro's credit, being like a superstar like that, it's very hard to defer control in a scene. And I think he does that really well in this. But yeah, unfortunately, he's basically like a blank slate that just kind of moves around and does things. And I agree with you about going way back to what you started. I completely agree with you about the length, where it's like this movie is long intentionally. It's not like some sprawling epic that got out of hand. It's, if you feel like, because I was reading one review where this person was complaining about how the movie feels long unnecessarily because there's a lot of conversations that kind of go in circles, and then they will stop that conversation, and then 5 minutes later they'll continue the conversation and have it go in circles again. But I feel like all of that is intentional on Scorsese's part. I think that's, it's intended to be like, yeah, this is what being at this intelligence level is like. This is what being aging is like. And I also feel like this movie suffers from what I'll call the Netflix syndrome, where Netflix will give a movie maker, a director, you know, like, here's a bunch of money, go shoot the movie that you gave us the script for. And Netflix is very hands-off, and they let the creator do whatever he wants to. And sometimes it's good to have that studio pushback because it prevents things from happening where it's like this movie goes off on like a weird tangent, you know. I think, like, I feel like,
I don't know, man. I think this is probably one of the best movies Netflix has ever done.
I agree with that.
And I think that
I agree with that.
I think the idea that you need a studio to push back isn't necessarily true. I think you need constructive feedback, but the idea that you need like clueless suits to be an obstacle for you to make a good movie is like, I don't think that's true.
It's just it's the line that producers give and and Hollywood suits give to make sure that it keeps people in line.
Propaganda.
I don't know. I feel like there should be some level of like there's like a nice middle ground, and sometimes I feel like the suits are kind of like the quote checks and balances unquote of the directors, because if you don't have that, you get Heaven's Gate director's cut, which is like, just to give you an example of something you've seen lately. And I feel like a lot of Netflix movies have that syndrome where it's like, oh, it's really good, but you put all of this money into something, it should be better than just really good.
Well, but I mean, Disney pumps millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars into their fucking superhero movies, and they're pretty blech.
The term is generic. Yeah.
They're just not interesting. The Irishman at least is interesting,
Yes. Netflix has made, I think a lot of the movies that they greenlight are interesting projects. And again, I would rather live in a world with The Irishman than without. And it also just feels like, I was going to say it feels like a very Martin Scorsese movie, but it feels like the Martin Scorseseest of Martin Scorsese movies. Because if you like it's just like, oh, if you like Martin Scorsese with his actors improvising dialogue in scenes and cutting around that, you're gonna love this movie because there's a whole lot of it. If you like those top-down shots of them putting guns down, you're gonna like that because this movie has at least 3 shots of it. Like all of that stuff. If you like fluid camera work, if you like slow motion, if you like gangsters, if you like morality tales, it's like this movie has it in spades. It's a very Martin Scorsese movie, which I like, and I will happily sit through that for 3 hours.
Yeah, it's every Scorsese trope in a single movie,
down to the
including
actors.
His trope of making really long movies.
Yep.
The interesting thing is, like, as he's getting towards the end of his career and his life, he's making, it seems to be, he's like trying to capitalize on all his cachet to make these more personal movies, even if the scope of them is pretty large and ambitious. But I think it's interesting to compare this to Silence, because I feel like The Irishman and Silence are the 2 big late life passion projects of his. And Silence could not be more different from The Irishman.
I agree.
Because the Silence, it's almost like he's trying to adopt a style that is not his to make the movie the way he thinks it should be made. And then The Irishman, it seems like he feels more at home. This is stuff he's used to, so he's just going to do his Scorsese thing. But I actually think I like Silence a lot better than The Irishman. I think The Irishman's a very good movie. I think Silence is an amazing movie. And I think part of it is because he really steps out of his comfort zone for that, and because the messaging in it is so close to his heart. Like, he is, kind of a lapsed Catholic. He was in the seminary for a while. He was supposed to become a priest before he became a filmmaker. I feel like all that stuff is really near and dear to him. Whereas it feels like The Irishman is another project that he's been wanting to do for a long time, and then kind of added a twist to it because he's making it now and not 20 years ago.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's great that these 2 movies came out back to back. Like, it's perfect. I agree with you that Silence is much more personal. It draws. Have you seen Last Temptation of the Christ?
No, I have not.
I have not either. That's kind of, but not really relevant. If you had, I would be interested in sort of the similarities between the 2 movies. But I would say that Silence is much more of a personal movie. And I think that it's a much better movie. And I think that Silence kept me engaged the entire movie. And it relied a lot less on Martin Scorsese trickery, but the stuff that was there was... What?
That's a good way to put it, though.
Like, the shot that always gets me, like the most Scorsese shot in that movie to me is the shot of like they would cut to Jesus and they would have the voiceover.
Yeah, they cut to the icon and the icon starts talking.
Yeah, like that the icon starts talking, or just like hard, like smash cut Jesus's face, smash cut back to Ramirez or whatever. Like all of that stuff, he used it to sort of enhance the movie, where it's like, because I think I've told you this, the way that Silence is shot, it did not feel like Scorsese shooting it. It felt like it was just like, I was looking for all of those Scorsese trademarks and I didn't really see them in there, but it helped to reinforce the movie as its own creation. And with The Irishman, it's like, it's nothing but Scorsese trick shots. It's everything you'd expect from him dialed up to 11. So whereas Silence, I think, is Scorsese as a filmmaker. The Irishman is what everyone thinks a Scorsese movie should be.
Yes.
I didn't even know The
definitely
Irishman
agree
was a
with that.
personal thing for him either. I thought The Irishman was like, it came to me late.
I mean, it feels pretty personal in the sense, or at least, I don't know necessarily the history behind it, but it feels like a movie. I thought he was trying to do it for a while.
He might have been. But he makes all of his projects seem personal because he was not necessarily fully engaged in Raging Bull until he started shooting it. And The Departed, he added his own little touches to it. So I always find it interesting when on movies that he...
Scorsese's been trying to develop The Irishman with De Niro since 2007.
Oh, wow. Right after The Departed.
Yeah. Although it was De Niro's idea.
Well, I can see that.
Interesting.
I can see that. I'm surprised that it took... I know that De Niro at one point was supposed to play Queen in The Departed. So it's interesting that it's taken them this long to get back together to do a movie. And now that they are, the next movie they're doing is Scorsese and De Niro and DiCaprio.
Wait, they've already announced Scorsese's next movie?
Yeah, I think he's in talks to do a movie with De Niro and DiCaprio, and that's going to be, 2 years from now. Paramount has greenlit it, so it's going to be back in theaters. Probably going to be like 2.5 hours. It's going to be like a 2-hour movie told in 2.5 hours.
A 2-hour movie told in 2.5 hours?
Pretty much, yeah. It's a Scorsese movie. Like, don't get me wrong. I love The Departed. I think it's a great movie. But Infernal Affairs was like a solid 100 minutes, and The Departed is like, we're going to introduce all of this other stuff. Like, okay, sure. We'll make it 2.5 hours. That's fine. Oh, there was another thing you were talking about, The Irishman. Fuck.
Okay, well, let's talk about the acting, right?
Yeah. Oh, no, I remember what I was going to say. Before we talk about the acting. From a script point of view, I like how the flashback of the movie is just like a couple of years ago. And so you have like 3 parallel stories running side by side. You have like his ascension through the mob, his road trip with Joe Pesci, and then just him as an old geezer. Like, I like that that's how they chose to do it because it keeps it fresher than just like retreading out the same structure as Casino and Goodfellas.
Yeah, it's true. It's not just like, all my life I wanted to be a gangster. And
All my life I wanted to kill other people. Yeah.
All my life I wanted to paint houses.
I knew I was in for a trip when the first thing that happens is it's like, I didn't even know what a house painter was. And then it's just like, I paint houses. I was like, what the hell?
I heard...
I heard you paint houses.
Houses, yeah.
I was like, oh yeah, that's very Scorsese. All right, this isn't going to look like a generic Netflix film. This is going to look like a Martin Scorsese movie.
Yep. So...
Let's talk about acting.
Yeah, the acting is interesting because it's like you got the 3 centerpiece players are De Niro, Pesci, and Al Pacino.
Yep.
3 Italians who are now at this point more known for caricatures of the kind of characters they play than the characters they play.
Except for Pesci.
No, even Pesci. He's known as he's his character from
that's
Goodfellas. That's it.
That's true.
That's all anyone sees. Short, angry, violent. Al Pacino is his character from Scent of a Woman because he won an Oscar for that and then is playing that for the rest of his life. And then De Niro is De Niro. And each of them has to step away from that in this, but only one of them is successful in doing so.
It's funny because like you were talking about Raging Bull 2 episodes ago, and I think that's the guy you're talking about. You're talking about Pesci, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah, Pesci's fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, exactly. Pesci is forever going to be associated with his character in Goodfellas.
And Casino.
For better or worse. And in this, he plays a completely different kind of mobster. He's almost more like Vito Corleone, where he's very quiet, he's very measured, he's very just matter-of-fact, very friendly, but everything he says carries behind it this really threatening power. Yeah. He never yells once.
No, he doesn't.
That's the one thing he's famous for, is yelling at people and beating them up.
He never lays his hands on anyone.
He never lays his hands on anyone. He never, funny? You think, funny? How am I funny, huh? He never does any of that shit.
Yeah.
He's really good. He plays a completely different character than what we're kind of used to from him. And he does a fantastic job. De Niro, I think, he's like half-half. His character is very De Niro-y.
Yes.
You do not believe for 1 second that he's a shred Irish.
Isn't De Niro like a quarter Irish or something?
I don't know, because he's played Irish characters before.
Yeah.
I mean,
Anyway.
Jimmy the Jet Conway in Goodfellas is supposed to be Irish.
I thought I had a conversation with someone. I thought he couldn't become a made man because he couldn't trace his lineage back to Sicily.
No,
That's
I thought
why.
it was he couldn't become a made man because he was Irish.
That was why
Or at
Henry
least
Hill couldn't.
He was half Irish. I mean, James Conway is an Irish name. You know,
Yeah. Fair enough. He is of Irish and Italian descent on his father's side.
Oh.
So he may not look Irish, but he's got a fifth Irish in him.
I'm more Irish than he is.
So
And for those of you listening who don't know who I am, I don't look Irish remotely.
Not at all. But De Niro's been so typecasted as Italian gangster, mafia guy. So at this point, it's like, oh yeah, the Irishman, sure. Yeah, just like, I don't even know. You believe
Well,
he's
it's weird,
Irish
too,
about
'cause
as
if
much
he
as
was
you
in-
believe that he's not 80 years old when he's in the rest of the movie.
Oh God, I know. Well, the other thing too is like you mentioned he was supposed to be in Departed, and were you saying he was supposed to play Martin Sheen's
Queenan.
character
Yep.
or Jack Nicholson?
I think he was supposed to play Martin Sheen's character.
So yeah, isn't he supposed to be Irish too? I mean, it takes place in Boston, so I assume everyone is supposed to be Irish. unless it's explicitly stated they're not.
Yeah, well, what's gone on with like Scorsese's new obsession with the Irish, like Gangs of New York,
Gangs of New York.
Departed, like The Irishman.
I don't know. Well, The Irishman is about Italians, even though it's called The Irishman.
It's about an Irish hitman and the Italian mob, and it's about union organization.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the prequels of Scorsese films.
That's one thing interesting that Scorsese does with this and Gangs of New York. It's always like he talks about some historical hot button political issue that was really big at the time that may not be as huge now, but it's a very good corollary to stuff that's going on now.
Yeah.
Like all the Irish stuff in Gangs of New York, you know, you can apply that to literally any immigrant group that wanders into the U.S. And the natives, the native-born Americans, led wonderfully by Daniel Day-Lewis,
Yeah.
are any of the nativist kind of know-nothing Bowery boy types that you see in other media and in the world. And then The Irishman, there's all this stuff about sort of, you know, union politics and corporations and, you know, labor and its relation to business and government, which seems to fit in pretty well with all of the income talk that goes on these days. And I mean, obviously workers and owners, unless you're working at a co-op or something where you own stock in the company, are always going to be in conflict. So that is a timeless problem.
Right. Well, how much of this has to do with the owners? Because I know that a lot of it, unless you're talking about like the union versus the mob, as the mob is encroaching and taking more and more of the pension money.
I mean, I think that's part of it. Because, like, you know, the union sort of sells their soul to become more powerful and more influential.
Right.
And in the end, they end up becoming owned by business owners, you know? Because, I mean, the mob has all their illegal shit, but they do own legitimate businesses.
That's true.
As movie mobsters like to say.
Yeah. That's true. They do end up becoming just another patsy for the business owner. I didn't think of it that way. Yeah, that's true.
What's weird is I had no idea this was true. It's interesting that Jimmy Hoffa donated so much money to Richard Nixon, considering how profoundly anti-union Nixon was.
He just really hated the Kennedys.
Well, and, you know, there's plenty of text and subtext about the Kennedys being a bunch of rich pricks.
Yeah.
At least in Hoffa's view, gloriously out of touch with reality. And the movie also seems to suggest that, you know, Frank Sheeran knows who really killed Kennedy.
Yeah.
Which I did not expect at all. I did not expect this movie to go into Kennedy assassination theories.
Yeah, I didn't either. Which is funny because, again, they cover that territory a little bit in The Crown, which I know I've mentioned The Crown in 2 different episodes, but they do cover, like, the Kennedy assassination in The Crown because, you know, it was, like, a worldwide momentous event and the fallout from that. And let's just say, like, history has not looked kind on John F. Kennedy.
No.
Both internationally and from some of these other things. Because obviously Nixon went, like, crazy in the White House in 1971 and, you know, his terms in office, but like,
well, Nixon was corrupt from the very beginning.
Oh, was he?
There's a story that I think the first case is like either the first case he ever worked on out of law school, or while he was still in law school and trying to pass the bar exam, there was a judge who said to him, I am terrified of you becoming a lawyer because you have no morals, no scruples, and the power of the law should not be in the hands of someone as evil as you.
I've heard that story. That's right. I've heard that. You know who he was talking to? Richard Nixon.
Richard Nixon.
Yeah, I have heard that story before.
We probably heard it from the same source on YouTube.
Well, you know,
it's power reveals, not necessarily that it corrupts.
You're right. I think we did hear it from the same video. We should plug that video. Put a link of it in the description.
Yeah, we could link to it in the description. But the view of Nixon was unkind in his time. Everyone hated Nixon perpetually because he was a piece of shit. Kennedy's more like Obama, I think, where it's like when he was president, he was this rock star.
Yeah.
And I think with the benefit of hindsight, we look back and go like, Jesus. There was a lot of shit going on that we either didn't know about or that we chose to ignore.
Yeah.
Just like I'm sure 30 years from now, people are going to look at the Obama presidency and be like, ugh, he actually was not that great of a president. Enough for I'll stop talking about politics.
I mean, yeah, because it can spiral out of control, but I agree. Benefit of hindsight does, influence a lot of how you look at these things, which brings me to my other favorite Scorsese thing, looking critically on our characters. So when I started watching this movie, in the back of my mind, I was always like, oh, well, I know Jimmy Hoffa is like corrupt union official. When they talk about people who hate unions, it's usually like you get like a caricature of Jimmy Hoffa. Do you think the movie, and I guess this is a leading question, as they say in the business, do you think that the movie takes a critical enough eye of him, or does it present him too much as a hero of sorts?
I think the movie seems to present him as a extremely flawed but well-intentioned guy for the most part. Towards the end, it may become more critical of him because he's obsessed with, spoiler alert, he is obsessed with, once he is arrested, sent to prison for fraud, he comes out, he's obsessed with gaining back control over the union, not necessarily to help workers, but he's like, it's my union. He's possessive of it. And like, this union belongs to me. It's mine. And I am the only one who can be in charge. And I have to publicly be in charge. And I think the movie is very critical of him in that light, although it does still portray him somewhat sympathetically because on the other side of the equation is the fucking mafia, who want to kill him. But it's interesting because I'm sure that Hoffa was a lot less sympathetic than the movie makes him out to be in real life because he was this power-hungry, corrupt kind of guy. He's, I think, got more in common with connected to Gangs of New York, not Gaines of New York. It's about bodybuilders. To connect it back to Gangs of New York, I think historically Jimmy Hoffa's more of a Boss Tweed kind of guy than he is, a Cesar Chavez.
Yeah, I agree with you there.
I mean, the thing the movie does really well is it... What?
I was like, I don't know if you want me to comment on this, but I'm going to agree with you that he is presented that way. But about like the critical eye of like, oh, well, we're supposed to really like Jimmy because Robert De Niro likes Jimmy, but he also supports Nixon, which is kind of like, should we like this guy that much? And then there's like the thing about the possessiveness of ownership and him being in power so long that he is just used to getting his way no matter what, which is both good and bad. Yep. I like that side of it as well.
Yeah, I do.
So I think it's critical of him. Yeah,
it is critical. I think the movie does a good job of having these characters who feel very fleshed out. They feel very three-dimensional. I think the length contributes to that because you get to see them in a lot of different contexts where they have, their moments where they act normal and they do very humanizing things. Like Joe Pesci, he keeps trying to win over Peggy, De Niro's daughter. Like he, tells her jokes and tries to buy her ice skates and all this stuff because he sees that she's just miserable and that she doesn't really like him, and he feels really bad about that, and he wants to be liked, and he wants her to know that he's got her family's back at all times. But then at the same time, he's cruel in that matter-of-fact way where it's like, Jimmy Hoffa's got to die and you're the one who has to do it, when he's talking to Frank at the end. And then even later on when he's kind of in failing health and they're dipping bread in grape juice The way they used to dip it in wine, you know, when they were at the restaurant. Yeah, I love that scene too. Yeah. And the movie does a good job of portraying people who are not good people, but showing them from every possible angle and then letting you kind of draw a conclusion of your own. It doesn't frame them too much. You get to see all of these guys who have done all these bad things from so many different sides that it's really admirable, I think. It's as close to you as you can get to being objective in a work of art, whereas it's like, you know, it's hard to show a character objectively, quote unquote, in a 2-hour movie. But it's like if you have this much time and you can show them in every conceivable scenario, experiencing every conceivable emotion or behavior, then you can say, well, like, okay, I've seen this person from all sides, and I can come to a real judgment without the movie leading you one way or another.
Well, and I think it's important that the movie is like, all of these characters are scumbags, but unlike a movie where, because we've all seen those movies where it's like we intentionally hate all of the characters, that does a good job.
Which is the next movie we'll talk about.
Oh. I like the way that it does handle all three, because I think, to me, the one who comes out being the most sympathetic is probably the one who's the most ruthless. It's Joe Pesci. Like, I found that his character was the most engaging for me, whereas, you know, like, probably the least offensive character was supposed to be Jimmy Hoffa. He was, you know, he did bad things, but his hands aren't nearly as dirty as, you know, as Robert De Niro's or Joe Pesci's in the movie. But also, like, I think that it's kind of, the movie is a little handicapped because everyone has this impression of Jimmy Hoffa, and Al Pacino kind of has to hit some of those notes. Like, the film has to hit some of those notes and some of those ideas of him as the union organizer. And because a lot of it's probably public record, whereas they could take a bit more liberties, kind of have the petting the dog scene for some of these characters a little bit more than they necessarily could with Al Pacino. Yeah. Except for the obsession with ice cream, which, my God, I wanted a chili dog and I wanted ice cream so badly.
I wanted a chili dog so freaking bad. I watched this on Thanksgiving. All I could think about was chili dogs.
Oh my God. I was like, that's a great idea. We should start pouring beer over our hot dogs. Like, that's...
Why didn't I think of that?
I don't know. That's the secret, though. It's out.
The other thing with Hoffa, too, is that it's Al Pacino. You know, Al Pacino plays Scent of a Woman Al Pacino and everything. And I appreciate his, like, attempts at a Midwestern accent.
Yeah, I do, too.
Kind of translates, but then it just gets overwhelmed by the larger Al Pacino accent that he has. And the other thing, too, is that he definitely seems more restrained. Like, you can tell there's parts where he wants to his inner Al Pacino wants to leap out and just, not just chew scenery, but, like, inhale it like a competitive eater. You know, like in Heat, when he's talking to Hank Azaria, and he's like, and she's got a gray ass! You know?
Yes, sir!
Like, there's moments where you think that's about to happen. Like, she's just about to do that, and then he pulls back. You know, which I appreciate, because I would have just started laughing so hard it would have pulled me right out of the movie.
Yeah, well, Scorsese's smart, right? He lets Al Pacino chew scenery when he's giving big speeches, but then on these intimate moments when it's, you know, Pacino and De Niro one-on-one, it's very much, hey Al, you went too big there, let's scale it back. Hey Al, you went too big there, let's scale it back. Hey Al, you went too big there, let's scale it back. You know, so like you can see the whole, like, Scorsese directing Pacino's performance, steering it in a specific direction, making sure that the nuance is there. Do you think he gives the best performance in this movie? Not to, like,
Pacino?
Not to bury the lead. Yeah, who do you think gives the best performance?
Pesci gives the best performance.
That's right, yeah. Okay, I agree. Pesci gives the best performance. Who do you think is going to be nominated for Best Actor?
Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro for looking 70 and not 80 in his 40-year-old scenes.
Exactly. The aging curve definitely gets lost somewhere in there, because he looks old as hell in, like, 1975 when they go to kill Jimmy Hoffa. So it's like, you know, you think there's not much room for him to get older, and then by the time we're in 2001 or something, or 2003 when he died, you know, Frank Sheeran does not die in the movie. In real life, he dies in 2004. De Niro doesn't look that much older than he did in 75.
I thought I was feeling like the only change was he was balding, and then they needed to apply some of that Guy Pearce makeup from Prometheus on him. Like,
oh yeah, definitely.
Put some of that. I felt like he looked significantly older between the road trip and when he ultimately died. But again, I think a lot of that...
He doesn't look 30 years older, though.
Yeah, that's true.
He looks maybe 10 years older.
Well, no, I would say, I don't know. For me, he looked significantly older, and maybe most of that was just because the job that they did on Joe Pesci to make him look older from when they were driving to like when he had the stroke. I was like, oh my god, they really did age you up a lot. Holy cow!
Really aged him. I also love all the little I love how stuffed it is with cameos. Like you got Harvey Keitel in there. You got Sebastian Maniscalco as Crazy Joe. Like Jim Norton pops up as a comedian. I think he plays who's the douchey guy who who used to be a talk show sidekick?
Adam Carolla?
No.
Oh.
What? No, like Johnny Carson's sidekick, who was famous for just being an asshole.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh, well, he plays that guy.
Hold on.
I just thought it was funny that it was Jim Norton. And there's a lot of just like little cameos in there that are fun.
I enjoyed Ray Liotta.
Oh yeah, Ray Liotta's.
Oh wait, not Ray Liotta.
No.
Ray Romano.
Ray Romano. Yeah, Ray Romano's in there.
Yeah.
Bobby Cannavale.
Yes. Yep. I always like seeing I always like seeing him. I'm trying to figure out who his co-host.
Don Rickles. Jim Norton played Don Rickles.
Yep. Don Rickles, who turned out to be an asshole. Are you thinking
that
of
was
his son?
His whole shtick. He was like an insult comic.
Oh, okay. Before Triumph, there was Don Rickles.
I mean, pretty much.
I'm going to check something here, because So the one thing about the de-aging technology, which again looks fantastic, is that they kind of like overdo it on how blue De Niro's eyes are. Like his eyes are blue, but in older movies when they're blue, it's like, okay, yeah, it's kind of blue. There's been this turn in modern movies where anytime someone has an eye color that's anything other than like shit brown, they're like, oh, we need to turn up the saturation to 20 degrees, like. It just gets insane. And I'm wondering if that's like a digital thing where when they color grade it, they're just like, let's make his eyes a little bluer. And then on top of that, it's a digital thing. So it's like they've just got like an escalation of it going on. But I wasn't sure if the whole time I was watching it, I wasn't sure if this movie was shot digitally or shot on film.
I have no clue. All I know is it was Rodrigo Prieto, who's Scorsese's new guy.
He is.
And then was this written by Steve Zalian?
It was.
Okay.
Gangs of New York, right? They both worked together on Gangs of New York, if I'm not
mistaken.
mistaken.
Although Gangs of New York was written by Steve Zalian, Kenneth Lonergan, and someone else, which is an interesting combo. I could talk about Gangs of New York Gangs of New York is weird because that's a project that Scorsese had wanted to do since like the 70s or the 80s. Why is it every one of Scorsese's projects is something he's been wanting to do for 20 years and just got around to now?
Because he never stops finding these things. Like I think Silence he found in like the
80s.
In the 80s, but The Last Temptation of the Christ was given to him by Barbara Hershey, I think when they were doing Boxcar Bertha. So like he always has these like weird little projects that he wants to do. And in between he'll do things that he like doesn't necessarily care that much about from like an engagement standpoint as far as the text itself, but is able to find interesting things. Like I don't think he was interested in The Departed because of the script. I think he found it as like, this should be an interesting challenge. The same with The Aviator. Like The Aviator was going to be a Michael Mann film. I think he was talked into doing it. And so like when we were doing the Ford v Ferrari episode, I didn't mention how Michael Mann was one of the executive producers on Ford v Ferrari, which makes me wonder if that was supposed to be a Michael Mann film. Anyway.
I don't know. Michael Mann makes like one movie a decade now.
Well, that's because all the movies he comes out with suck now. Like, Black Hat was really bad. It was really bad. And I know, I saw it.
I'm sorry.
So, yeah.
I'm sorry you had to sit through that.
I found out that in a pinch, taping like 3 layers of phone books to your body will stop a knife or a bullet. I'm not 100% sure, but one of the two, according to that movie. It's like all of the worst things of Michael Mann movies, like random gunfights that go nowhere, leading actors who don't speak English very well. It's all the worst things in Michael Mann's movies. No, seriously, one of the actresses is like full on like native Chinese, probably had to have her lines phonetically done, and yet her brother speaks perfect English. It's like, casting, you could have probably switched the two and it would have been better for the movie overall. But I digress. The Irishman.
Irishman. I mean, there was no DiCaprio in the movie, so he's the only Scorsese regular who's missing.
Yes. Yeah, because Keitel manages to pop up. Well, depends. You could almost say Liam Neeson, because Liam Neeson's been in a handful of Scorsese films now.
Yeah, but he hasn't starred in any Scorsese films.
No, he hasn't. That's true.
That doesn't really count. That's like Steve Buscemi in Coen Brothers movies.
Coen Brothers, yeah.
He just sort of pops up in the background somewhere.
Yeah. Well, can you imagine if Daniel Day-Lewis like popped up in this movie?
Oh my
like,
god!
If the role
that would have been amazing.
If the role of the little guy was supposed to be Daniel Day-Lewis,
even though Steve Graham makes way more sense. Is that character?
I've never seen that actor before. I thought he did a great job. Yeah,
he's in a lot of stuff. He's in Gangs of New York.
Is he?
Yeah.
Hold on, I just clicked on his name. Oh, I know who he is in Gangs of New York.
Yeah.
I know who he is.
He also plays Al Capone in.
I didn't watch Boardwalk Empire.
Boardwalk Empire.
But I did watch.
He's British. It's British, but he plays all these Italian guys.
It's like The Crying Indian. He was actually Italian, but he really wanted to get that Native American movie money. So here's another thing that's weird about The Irishman. Scorsese is actually pretty well known for how well he uses his female actresses, right? Because you've got, what's her name? Yeah. So, like, again, drawing more lines. So after Who's That Knocking at My Door, which was like, you know, Harvey Keitel and the girl that Harvey Keitel was going after. It's like, okay, those two. And then he did Boxcar Bertha, which you know, Barbara Hershey stars as the title character.
Well, yeah, that was also a Roger Corman schlock movie, though.
Yeah. So, I mean, you don't really count that. But, again, for the line. Mean Streets was all right. And then he did Alice Doesn't Live Here Anymore. And then, like, Jodie Foster became famous because of Taxi Driver, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And then, like, we're going to jump ahead a little bit here. But Raging Bull had Catherine Moriarty. And, like, she was one of the... her performance in that was one of the things that people were like really latched onto. I don't know if she was nominated, but like he handled her character arc really well, making her not feel like too weak. You know what I mean? You go to Goodfellas with Lorraine Bracco. She got nominated for Best Supporting Actress. You go to Casino with Sharon Stone. I don't know if she won, but she was nominated for Supporting Actress. We're going to skip over Gangs of New York.
I was going to say, I hope you don't bring up Gangs of New York.
Although I would venture that out of all of the roles Cameron Diaz has done, that's probably her best acting job. Then you look at Cate Blanchett in The Aviator, and then The Departed basically put Vera Farmiga on the map. So he's got a history of somehow, some way, Martin Scorsese has a great relationship with bringing out the best in female actresses. I don't know why. I don't know how it happened. But this guy whose movies are like ultra macho and ultra masculine, which I could argue against. I think it's sort of like a false positive that these movies are like ultra macho and ultra masculine. He seems to bring out these great female performances in them. Or he has some sort of strong female presence in them. Which is kind of
like some Scorsese alternate history that I had never paid attention to or was aware of.
Yeah, it's the weirdest thing. I know. I felt
Are you connected back to The Irishman now?
I am because I was kind of Jimmy Hoffa's wife was done really well. I think like you have kind of the seeds of like a strong Scorsese female character in there. But I'm wondering why Anna Paquin was cast in this movie at all.
She needed the money, probably.
I guess so. But it's just such a weird, like, she has maybe 3 lines in the entire movie.
Yep.
And, like, she's one of the people where they're like, oh, yeah, she's, you know, in the movie. She's starring in the movie. It's like, is she really? Because you could have gone with anyone else. Like, there's a daughter in the movie who's played by an actress I don't know who has more lines than her. So what was, like... why did she, more importantly, like, why did she agree if her part was going to be so small?
Hey, man, you know, Jonah Hill agreed to do fucking Wolf of Wall Street for like pennies.
Yeah, he did it at SAG scale, but Jonah Hill is in a lot of that movie. In fact, he's in too much of that movie.
Well, it's one of those things where I think it's like, you know, it's like, hey, you want to work with Martin Scorsese? Yeah, sure. It's like, okay, you get this bit part. All right, cool. You know, I don't think people care too much, or at least I don't think Anna Paquin cares too much.
I guess,
you know?
it's just so strange because she's in like all of these scenes where she doesn't really say anything. She just kind of has like you know, a digital blank face on the whole time.
Well, I think that's the idea, right? I mean, from a story standpoint, anyway. You know, Frank Sheeran is completely alienated from his own family.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that they don't talk a whole lot. And she fucking hates him too.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
You know, she's probably not going to talk much.
Well, I'm also surprised, like, why this particular daughter? Because they all hate him. But what was special about her? It was something that I missed over the 3.5-hour runtime.
Well, Peggy's the one who gets along with Jimmy Hoffa.
And that's the main ingredient.
I think that's it.
Fair enough.
I don't know. I think that's my guess anyway. Either that, or it's like, you know, if you wanted to explore the family dynamics with all 4 daughters, the movie would be even longer. Whereas I think you can use Peggy as shorthand for the other 3.
For all of his daughters, yeah. Yeah. I mean, the next question is like, well, then why not just cut it to 1 daughter? But it's not.
Because Frank Sheeran had more than 1 kid? I don't know. The other thing too is like when you're dealing with a biopic or a fact-based or history-based movie, you pick and choose what you're gonna
emphasize,
what you're gonna have, what facts you're gonna include, what you're gonna fictionalize. You know, did Frank Sheeran really deliver weapons to G. Gordon Liddy so he could execute the Bay of Pigs invasion? Probably not. But, you know, it's cool in the movie.
Yeah, well, you know, the unreliable narrator, how do we know, how do we ever know, how does one ever know when it's a story within a story?
Man, don't be pulling unreliable narrator shit with this. Like,
especially
this movie
not
doesn't need that.
Especially not in a Scorsese movie.
No. Yeah, because it's not, you know, it's not American Psycho where the reality of the character's story is being actively challenged by other characters.
You mean it's not Beowulf by Robert Zemeckis?
No. Yeah, well, God, can you imagine if it was, where it's like we're taking a critical look at this story that no one knows?
And he's like, I used to deliver things for Teamsters, and it's like he's in a limousine with like Jimmy Hoffa blowing up things out of the sidecar. It cuts back to him like all lame on a wheelchair. Man. I really like The Irishman. I don't know where I would cut it. I don't know why it feels so long.
Well, you know, the thing I like about The Irishman is it's, for me anyway, I thought it was paced pretty well. Like, it never felt slow. It never felt long. It just kept going and going and going. There's some question asked to Scorsese, like, why didn't you make this into a mini-series? And he said, well, I want you to watch the whole thing beginning to end in one sitting.
Yeah.
And that's totally doable with this movie if you have the time. It never, you know, you would never quit, or at least I would never quit for lack of interest, because, you know, it's paced really well. It is. It's always moving. It's always entertaining. There's always a joke or a new bit of information or a new scene or a new twist or something. There's always something to keep you going along. And, you know, I think, like, honestly, this movie could have been way longer. It could have been.
Yeah, it could have. We could have developed more with the family. We could have had more of, like, Russell's behind-the-scenes stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, Netflix could have made it into an 8-episode, single-season TV show if they wanted to. And it would have been interminably boring if they did.
Yeah.
Because most TV is just people talking endlessly to drag out one minor plot point.
I mean,
over an hour.
I would say that the difference between this is like I would have been interested to see if Scorsese had made it like an 8-episode series, what he would have done to continue the hook into you. That would be it. The other thing I was going to ask you, because when I was watching it, I was thinking of this movie in context of watching it in a theater, sitting down for 3.5 hours to watch it. Would this movie?
Pee breaks.
Which is what I was going to ask. Would this movie have benefited from the roadshow experience? You know, like you have the overture, you have most importantly, the intermission, and then you have the entr'acte. Like, do you think this would have been one of those movies that you could pull it off? Because it's weird in that it doesn't have, to me, that epic scope that a movie like that deserves.
No.
For being so long, which I think is where everyone is drawing the issue with.
Yeah, it doesn't have the epic scope that normally gets paired with a 3.5-hour length. It is just a very, very, very long movie. And there's also like no convenient break point for there to be an intermission, even though if you were to show this in a theater, it really needs an intermission. Like, I don't think anyone can, like, you would have to like dehydrate yourself like you're cutting weight.
Yeah,
you would you'd have to cut weight to go into the movie.
Because you have to be drinking water slowly throughout.
Yeah, well, no, because you have to just be able to sit there for 3.5 hours without going to the bathroom. So you have to be just totally dehydrated, which is not fun. Yeah, it's weird because, yeah, if you want to exhibit this at a roadshow or in a movie theater, it needs an intermission if people want to actually sit through the whole thing. And I don't know where you would put the intermission. It doesn't seem like there's a convenient break point. Maybe after the Crazy Joe stuff?
Is that where, what happened with the Crazy Joe stuff? Is that where De Niro kills him in the restaurant?
Yeah, assassinates him in the restaurant.
When did Hoffa go to prison? Because like that might have also been, because that was kind of like a turning point.
Kind of, yeah.
For the movie. And you kind of want the intermission at a turning point.
You could have the intermission at when the past timeline of the movie meets up with the road trip. Maybe, I don't know.
Well, so...
Or does that happen too late?
It happens too late because I watched the first 2 hours and 40 minutes, and then I had to leave because Thanksgiving. And I had 45 minutes left, and he was just boarding the flight to go to kill Jimmy Hoffa.
Okay.
Yeah, so I like that moment would happen a little too late. It's hard to find an exact point, but again, if he wanted to put an intermission in, he could have found a spot to do it. Mm-hmm. You know, instead of it feeling just like he and Thelma Shoemaker just like cut a bunch of scenes together and just kept putting more and more scenes on the Avid Media composer to like, it's fine. It all works. Send it out to Netflix. They'll love it. It's good though.
I also like that every tangent in the movie that seems kind of unrelated does eventually tie back to the main story. Like the Crazy Joe Gallo stuff. It seems like kind of a distraction, but then it ties into like the changing dynamics of the mafia world, the changing in leadership with like Fat
guy.
Tony becoming more powerful. And it also, like, you know, they reference it later in the movie. It's like, look, we can't have another like Crazy Joe sort of situation with Jimmy Hoffa. So I like that aspect of the movie.
Yeah, that's true. I didn't think about that. That's true. That's like, the reason why they wanted to prevent Jimmy Hoffa from being like Crazy Joe.
Yeah, so it's like little sort of 10, 15-minute tangents or side alleys that the story goes into. You know, they connect back to the main through line at some point or another. Right. Which I really liked.
Yeah, that's another very Scorsese-y thing that's not necessarily present in Gangs of New York.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's something I really noticed about Taxi Driver the second time I saw it, is that it's sort of all the plot points in the beginning sort of float gently in and out of the movie, like almost as if they're carried on a breeze or something. And there doesn't seem to be a driving like force behind any of it. But then at the end, they all coalesce to a point, and then that becomes this steam engine that just chugs towards the finish line. Yeah. With a ton of momentum, which is a really cool way of structuring a movie. And I would like it if more movies tried to do that, because it's, I don't know, I like that aspect of it. It's just like, you don't really know where all this is going, and then suddenly it all coalesces and it's all punching through to a clear end game.
I mean, part of that is just because Paul Schrader is weird. But brilliant.
Brilliant but weird, yeah.
Brilliant but weird. As a really brief aside in Taxi Driver, anytime someone talks about Taxi Driver, and I can kind of even relate this to Drive, I always think about Albert Brooks's like goofy scene with Sybil Shepherd at the beginning. And for some, I know this is so weird, but that's one of my favorite scenes. And like Scorsese felt he had to put that in the movie because the movie was so dark. He's like, I need to have a little bit of levity. And so that's what these two characters do, is they bring a little bit of levity. And I'm like, this is great. This is very entertaining.
So I like Albert Brooks's character in that movie, and how how he's kind of like trying to flirt with Sybil Shepherd, but she just doesn't take him seriously ever. And then De Niro comes in, Travis comes in, and they're having lunch at the pie place. And he's like, I don't like that guy you work with. He doesn't respect you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you have no connection with him. I know you have a connection with me. That's why, like, I wouldn't have any right to come in to talk to you. And it's very, like, my girlfriend made this point that a lot of narcissists will manipulate people by doing that. They will wedge themselves into someone's life by saying, like, this person that they suck, they don't respect you, they don't like you, but I do, I get you. You are like me, not like them. So they kind of try to swap themselves out for someone else, or they drive wedges between people to isolate the person they're interested in. And I thought that was a very insightful observation on her part, because I had never thought of that before.
I never thought of it that way, but I know I'm going to beat this to the ground, but watching movies critically, you think when you watch Taxi Driver that you should be on the side of Travis. And so when he's saying those things, like, he's a funny little man, I don't like him, I like you, you like me, we have a connection. And like the first time you watch it, maybe you're like, yeah, like maybe they do have a connection. Fairy tales do come true. This is a Hollywood movie. But then every time you watch it afterwards, like, Sybil Shepherd looks a little creeped out, but a little bit like,
she definitely looks really uncomfortable.
And like
she's like,
and like that whole scene plays out kind of uncomfortably, like even to the point where he's like she had a cup of coffee and I had a piece of apple pie and a slice of cheese, and like it's just enough. Like, movie does a good job of making it so that you're not always on Travis's side. Like you kind of keep your distance from him.
Yeah, you're right. Like he is the main character, and there are moments where you might be inclined to root for him, but they always play out like something's a little wrong that keeps you away from him.
Like, I think the scene where he's the most sympathetic is the scene where Scorsese is like, have you ever seen what this kind of gun could do to like that's my other favorite scene in the movie. It's incredibly well done though, like for being such a simple scene to shoot. It is so incredibly well executed, and creepy, and it's great. And
I like how the lighting coming in from the street is all green, so it makes it look like creepy and unnatural.
and how like there's like shades on them too, like Scorsese has to like lean forward, but there's still shadow on him, and the whole time like you can see De Niro's eyes, but like if I'm not mistaken, most of his face is covered in shadow. It's been a while since I've seen it, but like that scene, it stood out for a lot of people. Apparently, it typecasted Scorsese as a creep for a while.
Really?
Yeah, because he had to fill in for that scene. He didn't even. I think the only scene he intended to be as his director's cameo was when Sybil Shepherd was walking out in the white dress. But then the person who was supposed to do that scene like had a stomach flu or something and wasn't able to do it. So he's like, all right, I guess I'll
That's
take
hilarious. Because his character is so disturbing in that.
Yeah, he's so good with the, as they say in Knocked Up, Scorsese with the porn stash.
The scene, I think, where Travis is probably the most sympathetic is when he's at the diner with Jodie Foster.
Oh.
Because, like, the whole movie, he's this loner, he's very misanthropic. He just hates people. Like, when he's talking to the other cabbies, you can hear their voice in the background, but he's just, like, looking at his Alka-Seltzer dissolve and stuff.
Yeah. Well, and there's also, like, a huge gap between him and the rest of the cabbies. Like, he's very clearly isolated from everyone,
Yeah, he's just not there physically or mentally. And, he's hateful and creepy and racist and sexist and all this stuff. And then when he meets Jodie Foster, he kind of, it's like his one moment of humanity where he meets someone who's as fucked up as he is.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, Jesus Christ. You can sort of see it cross his mind. He's like, holy shit, this kid is just as screwed up as I am. I gotta get her the hell out of here. And I also love the way they talk in that movie, where Jodie Foster's like, oh, you're such a square. And then Robert De Niro's like, I'm a square. You're a square, man. You're a fucking square, hanging out with these fucking killers like Matthew. I'm not the square. Like, you're the square.
Well, yeah, that's a De Niro trademark. It's like, okay, what's the shooting script? All right, let's improvise this scene. Like, let's go through it and let's develop it. And it comes off as like really natural.
It does.
We've gone really far away from The Irishman.
We have. I
gonna-
love Taxi Driver, so I can talk about it forever.
See,
But-
I think my Scorsese movie I can talk about is I really love The Departed and I really love Gangs of New York. Even though I shouldn't. Because Gangs of New York's kind of tawdry and trashy.
It is very tawdry.
The one thing I wanted to bring back to The Irishman, speaking of the most Scorsese-ish of Scorsese movies on the surface, is the music selection. It's like the most Scorsese-ish music you could think of. It's all like 50s, 60s, oldies, crooners.
Is there any Rolling Stones in it?
There might not be. I'm looking right now at the soundtrack list. But when I say like old Scorsese, the only reason I would say, maybe not the Rolling Stones thing, which that is the one thing it's missing. Mm-hmm. But if you watch his short, The Close Shave, in that movie, it's like 50s music playing the whole time. It's like, there's nothing that feels Scorsese just like that, except you're right, it was missing some Rolling Stones. But it kind
Close Shave?
The Big Shave, it might be called. His short film. Hold on.
Oh. When you said A Close Shave, I just think of Wallace and Gromit.
Oh, yeah, no, I believe it's The Big Shave then. Let me, I'll get that for you. But like a lot of his movies are known for it. Instead of having a Rolling Stones song in this though, they have that like bass line that goes whenever the main character is walking like a badass. That's the closest they get to Rolling Stone songs. But like everything else in the movie is like really old school music. It all feels like it's out of, for me, the 50s and the 60s, and like kind of gives that nostalgic feeling, kind of like in Goodfellas how it does. And so that was the other like Scorsese. Yeah, The Big Shave. Okay. You know, and you know, the over the top violence, which is great.
You know, the violence
Great,
wasn't
but
that over the
grounded.
top in this movie though.
What I found is that none of the violence is really over the top in his movies. It just feels really violent and raw because of a lot of it happens without the camera cutting. So a lot of it happens in the space of time of the frame, and a lot of it is shown so matter-of-factly. Like they don't, it's not like they're shooting and like the blood splurts into the camera, or it's like a flashy shot. It's always like a very pedestrian shot. Yeah. And it all happens like in real time.
Taxi Driver is very matter-of-fact in real time. The violence in The Gangs of New York is hyper-stylized, though.
Some of the I would agree with you. Some of it is, most of it is. Because I'm thinking back to the violent scenes. But like, I think of The Departed, and like in The Departed, they'll have shots that cut to like, you know, like when Jack Nicholson kills when Jack Nicholson kills that one guy in the beginning. Or like, you know, scenes like that, it's like, boom, shock, explosion of violence, but it's not shot in a way where it's like violence porn. And then you have the scene where DiCaprio grabs the guy, throws him into the wall and starts beating him up. It's like, it feels more grounded and real because it's not like cut to death. It's like it all happens in the moment. But yeah, you're right. Gangs of New York, it does. I just think of them doing the old timey boxing and I'm like, yeah, that's cut to death. Or like the cut to that one girl who's like, or the one woman who's like torn off the guy's ear, and it's in that Wong Kar-wai slow motion. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Or like the draft riots at the end, which are just nuts.
Yeah. But then when he kills, spoilers, Bill the Butcher, like that is just shot like they're just staring at each other exhausted, and he's just like, that's a kill, you know, like that, you know, so there's still a bit of that good old Scorsese action that's there.
It's funny how Bill the Butcher shows Amsterdam Valen. It's just such a fucking ridiculous name.
Oh man.
He shows him how to how to butcher a pig, and he's like, you know, that's a kill, that's a kill, that's a kill. And you know, you feel like that is foreshadowing something because it seems very obviously foreshadowing something, and it never comes back again in the movie.
Doesn't he because it's been a while, I could probably pull it up, but I'm not going to. Doesn't he kill E.T. Kid by doing a kill that's on the pig? Like, isn't that how he kills the E.T. Kid?
No, he's impaled on a spike, and then DiCaprio just shoots him in the head. Shoots him in the neck. Because
if that's not the case, then the other thing I would think of is when he kills Bill with a knife, doesn't he How does he kill Bill?
He stabs him.
Does he stab him in one of the parts where it's like, that's a kill?
Maybe, but they don't ever reference it.
They don't have the quick flashback to Bill stabbing him there and then him doing it at the same time.
Yeah, there's no callback. There's no like Bill never says that's a kill as he does.
Well, he wouldn't. It's not. It's a Scorsese.
It's not in his character. Yeah.
Oh,
it's not in Scorsese's character to do that either.
That would have been in Bill's character. I think. I like to think he's like tapping his eyes like, that's a kill, boy.
He's like, that's a kill.
That's a kill. That would have been. I wish he had done that. God. Can we rewrite a movie that came out in 2002? Oh. God, I could talk about Gangs of New York and how they use all that period music to great effect to make it even that more Scorsese. But I digress.
Well, it's funny how there's like rock and roll music in the Gangs of New York, which again makes it feel like a 90s music video.
Yeah, it does. Did you see Scorpio Rising?
No.
Apparently that movie was hugely influential on Martin Scorsese. It's a really interesting movie, but that's where a lot of his ideas of how to incorporate music into his movies, it comes from that movie.
Well, that movie is hugely influential on a ton of people.
That's true. But like I had never seen or really heard of it, and then I saw it and I was like, oh yeah, I can see how that is. It's like the test film equivalent of like, this might be how we can incorporate music, and then Scorsese just kind of like ran with it. So
that's funny.
Yeah, I love I liked The Irishman.
Yeah, I did too.
I just kind of wish it was. I don't even know. What keeps it from being like one of the greatest movies of this year, aside from the fact that because one of the reasons The Lighthouse is so good is because it's so tight.
Well, for me, it doesn't have that impact that like The Lighthouse had, you know?
Yeah.
And I which is interesting because the movie is 3.5 hours long, and it's all building up to kind of the final tragic half hour of, Robert De Niro's old. He's outlived all of his mafia buddies. He's alienated from his family, and he's sort of preparing to die alone as the punishment for all of his misdeeds, And that's supposed to be like this very powerful, poetic final chapter. But for whatever reason, it just didn't hit me that hard. Maybe it's because I could kind of feel it coming, or I don't know. It wasn't as resonant as I think for me, as it was necessarily meant to be, or maybe it was not as resonant as it was for other people who saw the movie. Because I think that's ultimately what the movie's about. It's about growing old. It's about kind of looking over your life and all the things that you've done and having to live with the consequences of every bad thing. And in the case of Frank Sheeran, it's a shitload of bad things and all the mistakes that he's made.
I mean, like a lot of the things Martin Scorsese does, it's just so matter of fact. It's just there. And I think maybe that's why it didn't hit as hard. And like I said, it's...
I don't know, man, because like Silence hits pretty hard.
It does.
It hits really fucking
But it's also...
hard.
But like the edges of... Like if I had to draw a sine wave and where like hitting 1 and 10 are sort of the emotional benchmarks that a movie hits, I would say that The Irishman floats between like a 4 and a 6 consistently. Whereas Silence continually hit, like just from the get-go, is just like 1s and 10s the whole movie. It's just a very intense movie the entire time. Whereas The Irishman isn't necessarily intense at any moment, except maybe when he does the deed to Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah.
But like,
well, even then, it's like strangely like matter-of-fact and sudden, which I think is meant to make it kind of more realistic. That it's like he almost haphazardly kills Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah. Jimmy Hoffa,
who's like his
get out of here.
Friend,
boom, boom.
you know? Yeah.
Now that I got across, I think the relationship between Al Pacino and, because you'd think that like De Niro and Al Pacino would play up some sort of like acting connection better. And again, I think if this movie were made 10 years ago, it might have been even more resonant. But like we had seen Righteous Kill had come out. De Niro had been phoning it in performances for the last 10 years. Al Pacino had become a shell of the actor he was. It kind of comes at a bad time for them, just so that even when that happens, it's like watching De Niro and Pacino in a movie together doesn't have the same effect that it would have 10 years ago. Like they're both like I think there's a reason why on the poster Joe Pesci is first and foremost, because he's the one that everyone forgot existed, and he's like, I'm back, bitches.
He's Martin Scorsese has brought him back again out of another retirement.
And as he, and just like in Raging Bull, he plays, the reserved, sympathetic figure, but no
Strangely,
explosion.
even though he's probably the most of the
worst.
3 leads, he's probably the worst.
That's just how good Joe Pesci is,
He is, yeah.
He can transcend Home Alone.
And My Cousin Vinny.
And my Hey, Marissa Tomei was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Supporting Actress for that movie. Probably because she had to act like she was interested in old Joe Pesci at that time. Any more thoughts on The Irishman?
Not really. It just, it's a really good movie, but it felt like I wanted something more from it. I wanted that Taxi Driver kind of perfection.
I would have been happy with Casino perfection, which is kind of the lower end great.
Or like
Scorsese
that Goodfellas kind of perfection. Like, I think looking at all the Scorsese movies I've seen, Taxi Driver is number 1, easy. And then it's like Goodfellas, Silence, are sort of tied for number 2. And then I have very fond memories of The Departed, even though I haven't seen it in many, many years.
As long as they don't talk about microprocessors. Microprocessors. Kid, had you hear anything about microprocessors? That's a good question. I haven't rated his movies in a while, but this one is kind of like within the top 10, but like the low top 10.
Well, I don't know where The Irishman fits in. I mean, I guess that's a testament to the fact that Scorsese is one of the best, and he's still one of the best, and, he's been working for so freaking long.
Yeah. He's one of the best, but it's weird because he's super commercial to guys like you and me, but the numbers don't translate. Like, there's a reason Spielberg can do whatever project he wants, and Scorsese has projects languishing in development hell for 10 years, 20 years. Like, people don't want to fund him, even though every single one of us film nerds would.
I know. It brings us back to the very first episode of this podcast. Who wins, The Irishman or Avengers Endgame? At the box office, it's clearly Avengers, but which is the better movie? Which is 20 years from now, what are we gonna be talking about?
But that's the thing. If this were a home run, it would be easy. But this isn't a home run. It's like a solid double or triple. It's like, okay, it's good. Whereas the reason people are gonna watch this movie is because it's Scorsese, it's De Niro, it's Pacino, it's Pesci. Like, that's the reason you're going to watch this movie, not necessarily because you have any interest in it. Like, I don't have to worry about saying spoilers for The Irishman because you know what you're getting, and you're getting it in droves. But it's also a lot of commitment to it. Whereas someone might just be like if it had the depth of Silence where you get kind of like excited and you're like, oh my God, that's right, I'm going to watch this transcendent piece of media, that's different. But I don't think this hits the level of transcendence that you would want out of a Scorsese film. It's a Netflix movie. It tends to happen with them.
It's Scorsese's version of a Netflix movie.
It literally is. 100%.
Will Netflix ever have a transcendent piece of film in their library? I think
I don't know.
For me, maybe Maniac kind of like Fukunaga's stuff with Netflix is so far and above everything else on their platform. It's weird.
But in that case, like, we're not talking about television, because if we're talking about television, it opens up a different can of worms.
Well, exactly. Well, I mean, I'm also Beasts of No Nation.
Yeah,
all these years have gone by. Beasts of No Nation is still Netflix's best movie.
I don't know if Netflix ever will, because it's. I guess it would depend if at some point we consider Netflix a studio. It's the new money of Hollywood.
I mean, I consider them a studio at this point.
They should be, but when we talk about the big studios, it's like for some reason Netflix is absent. I don't know why.
Well, because they're not guilty of the same sins as the other studios that we discuss.
That's true.
Their issues are sort of unique to them.
Should we talk about Knives Out, or do you?
Sure.
All right, good. I was going to say, or do you have anything else to say about The Irishman?
Not really.
I don't either. I just keep staring at Joe Pesci's chin.
Okay, one last thing about The Irishman. Is that Joe Pesci's real nose?
I don't know. He's got the J.J. Abrams thing going.
Yeah, I don't know. All right, Knives Out. What do you think?
Knives Out. For me, Knives Out was a shiny and chrome.
Really? For me, it was a Witness.
Yeah. Yeah, and here's why. And I can understand why it's a Witness for you. Knives Out kept me engaged the entire time. There was no point in the movie that I felt like I could leave for a piss break. Now, that did not stop me from leaving for a piss break, but there was no point that I didn't think so. Two, it took... Spoilers, by the way.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Don't listen to
We're spoiling Knives Out. go see the movie because it's a fucking whodunit. You don't want it spoiled for you.
And I think it's a genuinely fun experience too. There's even a Gravity Rainbow reference in there, which is like
yes.
Rian Johnson at his Rian Johnsoniness.
I know. Which it's funny because he said no one's read that book, and I unfortunately have read that book.
But it's a whodunit, but they reveal who did it in the sense that we normally think of it. They reveal it early on, and then the movie shifts its narrative focus. And I think because it cleverly shifts its narrative focus, it doesn't end up feeling like a retread of Murder on the Orient Express.
Or just Murder, She Wrote.
Or which there's a reference in the movie.
Yeah. So are you saying, Matt, that it subverted your expectations?
It did, because I did not expect the second half of the movie to be a thriller, quote unquote, I guess is the right term, where the person is actively trying to prevent the police from stopping it. I guess it ended up turning into like Match Point for some reason, like halfway through the movie. But I also liked the way that they painted the characters, and I'll be honest, I was a huge fan of Benoit Blanc. I was like, all right, cool.
You enjoyed Daniel Craig's performance as a steamed ham.
I did, because the whole movie is kind of like a giant steamed ham. I mean,
it is. Everyone's hamming it up big time, except Ana de Armas. She acts normal.
You got to have one straight man.
Everyone else is a cartoon. Yeah.
And go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think it was executed pretty flawlessly. I think it was just really well done. I was entertained the whole time, and I'd be really interested to see it again, because the thing that'll make a good whodunit continue to be a good whodunit is if on the second watch you're still actively engaged, even though you know the solution.
You know who done it.
You know who done it, and you know who. Yeah. Pretty much. So like, even if you rewatch Kenneth Branagh's Murder on the Orient Express, or if you watch Sidney Lumet's Murder on the Orient Express, which are the two go-tos I'm going to give on this, if you're still actively engaged in the movie for different reasons, then it transcends being just like a spoiler warning.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, for me, the movie, it is, I did like that aspect that they reveal kind of what happened fairly early on, and then the rest of the movie becomes a thriller where you then sort of call into question the actual events, or there's like it's sort of, the whodunit is not what happened, but the context around what happened. So I think that was kind of an interesting take on it. The only issue is like, when they show you what happened early on, how the murder/suicide occurred, like, you know that's not it. You know that there's an extra layer that's missing that will be revealed later. So, I mean, unfortunately, the structure of whodunit type mysteries kind of, your expectations are set, and as much as Rian Johnson tries to subvert them, he can't because of the structure of what he's doing. So, or the conventions of what he's doing eventually have to bring him full circle. He can do it differently, but he still has to do it. And I think it was, obviously the conventions of the whodunit genre, with like, the folksy detective who just spams bizarre one-liners.
Yes.
And talks in this very flowery way. The kind of zany cast of characters who comprise the possible culprits. All of the, like, this is the reveal where we gather all the important people in one room and the detective explains everything. Like, all of those, he's very conscious of all that. He mines all of those conventions that we're familiar with for humor, even though, for me, a lot of the jokes just didn't land. I don't know why. Like,
really?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just like a lot of, there's a ton of jokes in the movie, but, most of my responses were,
There were the mouth chuckle.
Yeah, I was just like,
Was it the mouth chuckle of, oh, that's clever, or was it like, okay, you tried? Like,
it was more like, okay, you tried.
Oh no, that's the worst.
I mean, there were some genuinely funny jokes in that movie, but a lot of it was just like, oh, okay, yeah, that was a joke. So a lot of the humor just didn't work so well for me. I'm not sure why, but it just didn't. I mean, I do also kind of like Benoit Blanc, as ridiculous as he is, just because it's fun watching Daniel Craig be ridiculous.
Yes.
Although I enjoyed his wacky Southerner more in Logan Lucky.
Yeah, I like Jimmy Bangs. I like them both. I like Jimmy Bangs, but Especially when Jimmy Banks starts breaking out the chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
It's the best part.
That was great. I mean, it's funny because both Soderbergh and Rian Johnson have this very snappy filmmaking style where it's just like boom, 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 boom. The story just is always jumpy. It's always moving.
I don't necessarily
But I like
agree with
Soderbergh
you.
way better than Johnson.
I like Soderbergh way better than Johnson. It's weird because they're both kind of cut from different ends of a similar cloth because, like, have you seen Brick? Mm-hmm. Okay, so Brick when people talk about, oh, this is an independent movie, Brick feels like an independent movie. It's got, like, the snappy dialogue. It's got, like, oh, we're trying really hard to be clever. We've got really interesting camera angles. We're going to manipulate the camera. Mm-hmm. We've got, we're edgy and we're modern and we're young and take notice and great and editing and like mixing, because a lot of that movie seems like it takes forever for like point A to meet point B, but then it's like a flurry of action. And then you look at Soderbergh and he like came from Sex Lies and Videotape.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean why it's like they're cut from different ends of like a similar cloth, because it's like they're both really true. Heavy indie movie makers who both have like a really big repertoire of influences and references. But anyway, I interrupted you.
Well, one note on Brick, one of the parts that kind of made me laugh was Joseph Gordon-Levitt's little voice cameo at the beginning of the movie, where he's like a detective on some TV show that
I missed his cameo.
You did?
I didn't realize that was Joseph Gordon-Levitt, but yes.
Yeah, that was Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He's you just hear his voice, and the line he says is hilarious because he plays a detective on some TV show.
I was gonna say, did that get you laughing?
That did.
That got me laughing too. I thought it was the funniest thing ever, and people were looking around at me, and I was like, "This is hilarious!" It just keeps escalating farther and farther in more ridiculous ways. This is great. Mm-hmm. It took everyone in the audience like a half second to figure out what was going on. I didn't realize that was Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I was wondering where his cameo was.
Yeah, I like all the acting, even though it is very cartoonish. And then Ana de Armas does a good job as her character, and her part is played pretty straight, even though the puking when she lies is a very cartoonish character trait.
I didn't think you were serious. I thought you meant it was metaphorical. That got a laugh out of me when it happened. I was like, oh, that's a good one. That's a good one. I like that.
I'm glad Michael Shannon had at least one scene where he raises his voice.
Yeah.
Where he's like, you want more cookies? That was great.
He has apparently Michael Shannon has both Rian Johnson and Chris Evans' favorite one-liner in the movie. It was improvised. It was something like Chris Evans was like, "You're a piece of shit, and you're a piece of shit," and he's like, "The biggest piece of shit in here is you," or something like that. It's like, "I will show you how big of a piece of shit you can handle," or something like that. So apparently Michael Shannon was I thought he was going to be in the movie more, and he was just very underutilized.
I mean, there's a lot of really good high-profile actors in the movie, so you could argue most of them are underutilized.
Especially the second half of the movie. I think that's where it kind of comes to a head, because in the first half they're all really on target, and I think for me, one of the guys who steals the show is Don Johnson. Is just so entertaining in the movie.
Yeah, he does a really good job.
It was good seeing Jamie Lee Curtis in a movie again that wasn't, Halloween retread. I agree. All of the actors did a good job.
It's weird how topical the movie was as well. And I think it's an unfortunate aspect of the time we live in, where it's like just everyone's got to make everything about Trump these days. And
that was
why?
That was something that you did not like?
No, it's
annoying. I didn't like that either. It's like...
Because it's like imagine watching this movie 20 years from now, where you kind of people have already forgotten what the Bush years were like. People will forget what the Obama years are like, and people are going to forget what right now is like. Imagine watching this in 20 years and being like, what the fuck are they talking about?
The only thing that I can think of is that immigration as an issue has always been an issue and will always be an issue. I don't necessarily think that some of the things like, oh, he's just an insular neo-Nazi troll for the little kid, or like, oh, she's a snowflake. Like that stuff, that's gonna age it. It's bad.
I think a lot of the topical stuff is gonna age pretty poorly, because it's like,
I agree.
I feel like the whole world just has... Well, okay. It seems like there's a derangement syndrome for every president ever. Everyone talks about, liberals have Trump derangement syndrome. Okay, first of all, everyone is fucking Trump derangement syndrome, conservatives included. because that's all anyone can talk about anymore, and it's annoying as hell because he's such a boring subject of conversation.
Yeah,
But
and
it's
unfortunately,
you go back,
he's always everyone's only subject of conversation at this point, which is unfortunate.
Well, I think people who have nothing interesting to say talk about Trump. And then, but you go back 8 years, people had Obama derangement syndrome, and before that they had Bush derangement syndrome, and before that they had Clinton derangement syndrome, and it just keeps going and going and going. And it's annoying when pieces of media like lean so heavily into it, whereas it's like you can have a few nods or something, or you can there are ways to signal that this movie is of right now, but it's just like having the characters in the movie act out some like cliched Thanksgiving table conservative uncle hippy dippy aunt political debate. It just rubs me the wrong way.
Again, I don't think any movie should try to be of the moment either, which is like this movie. If you take away the political talk about that, I mean, they might as well have just been like, and President Trump is an asshole. And like, okay, I guess we know when this movie takes place. But I don't think any movie should try and be of a certain time unless it's a period piece. And I don't think this was intended to be a period piece. So. Well,
because also art acts as a time capsule of the era in which it was produced.
Right.
And already, exactly. You don't need to shoehorn in additional content to make that happen. Like, this movie would already be a time capsule of 2019 in the same way that I think The Last Jedi is a time capsule of 2017, because it is about that time period and how people felt about the world and about Star Wars and about all that other stuff already. You don't need to shoehorn in like overt political text into it. And it's also like, the movie's pretty in your face politically anyway with, like Chris Evans. So I guess we'll get into spoilers.
Yeah.
Chris Evans is the bad guy. He done it.
Again, yay!
More or less.
Chris Evans the asshole. He returns.
I know. We missed him. We missed him dearly.
Yes, we did.
Although he's not as much of an asshole as he is in that awful movie, Wild People or whatever.
I did not see that one.
He's bad.
He's a great asshole in Scott Pilgrim versus the World, though.
He is. He's also a great asshole in Fantastic Four.
He is. He's the only redeemable thing about that movie.
But, okay, Chris Evans has done it. He's being confronted.
Go ahead.
Benoit Blanc, the folks' gentleman sleuth, is
Foghorn, Leghorn, and Daniel Craig's body.
Is reading him the riot act and like kind of laying out everything that he's done and how they figured it out. And then Chris Evans gets all angry and gives this speech to Ana de Armas about it's like, you can't take our birthright from us, blah blah blah. Like, this is ours. You think this is our birthright? You think we're just gonna let you walk up in here and take it? And it's like, that's like his whole speech to her, being an immigrant, getting the old man's inheritance, like that's already politically heavy-handed enough. Like that moment alone communicates the message of the movie, which is basically like, America is a meritocracy. There's no such thing as birthright. There's no such thing as inheritance. Like what was built by the previous generation is up for grabs for whoever's willing to work for it. You don't get it by virtue of your birth, because that's fundamentally un-American. Like, we get that. Cool, fine, whatever.
It's supposed to be, yeah.
You don't need all the other stuff to communicate that. Like, that in and of itself works. All the other topical shit that just, it just feels like beating a dead horse.
Yeah, the whole thing about, like, illegal immigrant, it's like, it's enough to be like, oh, yeah, I got you. Although I think Benoit Blanc's line where he's like, this hasn't been in your house for generations. You bought it, your grandfather bought it from a Pakistani guy in the 80s. That got me laughing, and apparently no one else in the audience because they didn't get it.
That was a funny line as well. One other thing I kind of disliked about the movie, which it's just a taste thing, it's not a fault with the movie, is that like it looks like a shitty paperback mystery novel, like book cover that you would find in your public library. Like, you know what I mean? It looks like a shitty book cover, and that I get it. I get why that was done. He obviously wants to suggest that look because it's again part of the genre that he's working in. So I don't blame him for it. I just think it looks hideous.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it was a tasty. Well, because again, he already had done Brick, so he had done his like gritty, film noir, neo noir type movie. So this was his Clue / 1960s Murder on the Orient Express slash, you know, highly saturated colors, a little bit goofy.
Yeah.
I
Hell,
can,
Lakeith Stanfield says the house looks like a clue board.
Yep. And the whole thing almost plays out like one. That house is great, by the way. Like, it's just such a fascinating set location. But I understand what you're talking about. It feels like it's trying really hard to be quirky, and I always hate movies that are really trying hard to be quirky. Like, I get it. It's, you know, it's supposed to look like a mystery cover, or I get it. It's supposed to look like Clue, and we've got the quirky detective in here. Yeah, I get it. You're pulling from Agatha Christie and all these other things. Like, but it didn't really bug me. Like you said, it is a taste thing. It didn't really bug me. I actually liked it that they leaned into it as much as they did. And I did like the fact that she would puke anytime she had to say the truth. I thought they were going to do a little more with it. Like, if Benoit really didn't know that she had done it and she pukes in the cup, I wonder if there's like a cut scene where he's like sniffing around and he like picks it up and he looks like, ooh.
Well, because he's in her car with the barf cup.
Yeah.
For a while and doesn't smell it.
Yeah.
Although, like, there's always that thing about, like, how much is he playing along?
Right. Which
versus how much does he really know?
And they make it clearly apparent, you know, at the end of the movie that he knew the whole time, which is...
it's a weird cop-out.
It is, but like there's, as someone pointed out, he never asks her a question after that initial questioning. Like he never asks her a single yes or no question. So like he probably knew he wanted to test the gag reflex. And then after that, he was like, okay, let's see if she can just lead us into who did it. And again, you can say that the whole who done it part of it where like she gave him too much morphine, but it turns out that she knew the distinction between the two medicines. Like you can say that's like a little goofy, like would she really know, or is that an easy cop out? But like the fact that he kept talking to her over 10 minutes in that one scene probably didn't have any morphine in the system. I'm just saying.
I know. Knives Out, we're talking about the barfing.
Yeah. I love it that she just barfs on Chris Evans's face. It's one of those things. Did you see Fracture with Ryan Gosling and Anthony Hopkins?
No.
Okay. Well, I could spoil it for you, but...
Go ahead.
Okay, so...
No, just spoil it.
Don't just spoil it?
Yeah, just spoil it. No,
okay.
I'm never going to see it.
So Anthony Hopkins is originally tried for attempted murder for his wife, and he gets off of it because he shot her in the head. But the bullet's still implanted in the brain, so they have her on life support. And then he gets acquitted, and he has power of attorney, so he takes her off life support, and she dies. And so then they figure out how Anthony Hopkins killed her, which they make it clearly apparent in the movie that Anthony Hopkins killed her. They reveal how he killed her, and he's like, oh, sorry, sport, double jeopardy applies, so I can't be tried for it. And Ryan Gosling's like, that's true. We did try you for attempted murder, but now that she's dead, we can try you for murder. And it was kind of like the same thing with this movie. It's like, Chris Evans, even though you didn't cause his death in the movie, you killed the maid, and she just died. Yep. So we could charge you with murder. And it's like, that's a fun little twist. Like,
yeah,
I kind of saw that was coming, especially when like she doesn't say a thing after he starts going on his tirade when she's like, she's alive. I'm like, and Chris Evans is just sitting around the last 5 minutes of the movie with a bunch of vomit on his face. It's great.
Yeah, this movie is, despite my bitching about it, is very entertaining, and all of the whodunit stuff is very
tropes.
Well done.
It is.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it covers the classic whodunit ground, but does it in a different enough way that it's entertaining and fun and interesting and suspenseful. Which is tough because just look at Agatha Christie's career, or just look at fucking Murder, She Wrote. I mean, the genre's been mined to death.
Yeah.
So for someone to try and do something even remotely new is a pretty gutsy maneuver. And if Rian Johnson is one thing, it's guts.
Guts and a willingness to tweak a couple of things like that, because that's what makes the movie work, is that the structure of the movie is tweaked. We reveal who did it early on, and like I know that you had said like, oh well, I hate it because now I'm constantly trying to figure it out, like, well, where is the hitch in the plan, where is this or where is that? But I think
I don't hate that aspect, but it is unfortunate.
I think it's done purposefully though, because it keeps you engaged. You're like, okay, well, I know that she clearly didn't do it, so how did she not do it? Like, where is the hiccup? Where's the hitch coming from? And so like the whole time because my fiance leaned over to me and she was like, well, if we know she did it, what's the point in watching the movie? And I'm like, well, that's the question that's going to keep us watching the movie, which you could argue is like maybe a bad idea, but it's a risk, and it's a risk that I like, and it kind of paid off. Kind of.
Well, it is a risk, and I think it did pay off, because it's when you watch any mystery, you will always have that thought running through your mind: what's the twist? What's the twist? What's the twist?
Right.
Which is generally why I think it's a bad idea to advertise a movie based on a plot twist. You know, like there's that movie, The Good Liar, with Helen Mirren and Ian McKellen, and it says like the twist you'll never see coming. It's like, don't put that in the fucking trailer, man, because now everyone's like, what's the twist? What's the twist? And it's. You never want people thinking that if you can avoid it.
Right. Unless the movie you have is a real stinker.
Yeah.
Then you're just getting them in.
But, it's like with Knives Out, I think that what's the twist thinking is integral to what Rian Johnson's trying to do in terms of the experience that he's trying to create for the audience. He's trying to kind of redirect your impulse, which is clever. I like that choice.
I also like the ending. Not just because the movie ends, but because, like, if you're paying careful attention to the movie, you know exactly what's going to happen when he grabs that knife.
Oh, yes, exactly. Because, well, it's funny because, I had been thinking that as well. Like, they're sitting in the room with the throne of knives, and I'm like, oh, Chris Evans is probably going to try to attack her at some point with that knife, or with a knife from there, and it's going to be a prop because, Christopher Plummer is like, my kids are they've never had to fend for themselves. They don't know the difference between a real knife and a stage prop.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it's going to be a stage prop because that's the point, is that they're so removed from having to fend for themselves, they have no survival instincts. And I think a lot of people in the theater caught on that and whispered in their friends' ears as that moment was building up to prove how smart they are.
I definitely was cackling in my seat. I was like, oh yeah, I know what's going on.
Yeah. One thing annoying about my experience was just I sat in front of some people who could not shut up. They were talking to each other during the entire movie. And I think part of it was just, like, sometimes when you watch a mystery movie with other people, they will talk to you during it to try and prove that they're intelligent and they know what's going on. And they can guess the correct ending of the mystery. And my attitude is, you're watching a movie. Shut the fuck up. I'm trying to hear what they're saying.
Yeah, I was constantly trying to figure out the next twist. But in everyone who watches a movie with me's defense, you should probably never watch a movie with me because I laugh too early at all the jokes. I preempt all of the joke punchlines because I kind of can see because you kind of can see some of them coming. And then I laugh too hard at all the jokes. So I'm definitely adding to the problem of the theater going experience.
I will only talk during a movie if the movie's terrible.
Yeah, it's a good rule.
That's my only condition. Because, there's some movies I've seen that are so bad, I have to start talking, otherwise I'll leave.
Yes, yeah.
And it's how I stay engaged. When I watched the Justice League, the only way I could stay engaged through the whole movie was to talk about it to my brother.
Yeah, I remember we did a fair bit of that with Pathfinder. Oh my god.
Yeah, or I had the same experience with Jurassic World. Jurassic World is so bad.
Yeah.
I had to just talk the entire time I was watching it. Otherwise, I would have just gone crazy.
I mean, there are definitely moments in Jurassic World that happened to me, but I don't have the disdain for that movie that you do, but I also have not seen it in a long time, and I don't know if I would be able to make it through another viewing. It might be tough.
Oh, God. I mean, Jurassic World just screams incompetence at every turn. Anytime something happens in that movie, I'm just like, why? This doesn't make any sense. Why does, he's killing them for sport. It's like, does he have cat DNA or human DNA? Those are the only two animals I can think of that kill for sport, giving him frog DNA won't do that. Or it's he somehow knows how to use tools, or he can figure out technology. The whatever it's called, the Deus Ex Machina Rex. It's like he can use technology. It's like he knows how our our fucking night vision works or whatever. It's like, how? How the fuck does he know how night vision goggles work? Like, does he have freaking, like, what kind of DNA are you putting in this thing?
Yeah.
And it's also, I mean, I think I mentioned this in our podcast about Ford versus Ferrari, but, you know, Disney, and obviously this is not a Disney movie, or at least it wasn't a Disney movie at the time. You know, Disney has this habit of pointing out their own hypocrisies as if that somehow absolves them of any wrongdoing. Like, Jurassic World is the worst example of that, where the whole movie is about how big, stupid sequels are stupid.
And it's a big, stupid sequel being stupid.
And cause more problems than they should. And it's a big, stupid sequel. It's like, if you think this type of movie is so bad, why did you make this type of movie? You fucking hypocrite. If you know better, why did you do it? Like, it's this... I think it's a cultural problem too. Like, for some reason, it seems to me that people will behave badly and then comment on their own bad behavior as if that somehow makes it okay.
Yeah.
And it's like, look, if you know, it's like, haha, I'm such an asshole. Like, I mean, it explains a lot, actually. People do shitty things and like, aren't I so shitty? Like, as if that somehow makes it cute. It's like, no, it's not cute. If you fucking know better, then don't fucking do that shit. You know, it actually makes it worse that you know you did something wrong and are, like, doubling down on it.
Yeah. Self-referentiality is almost never clever. It's very hard to do it clever. And if you're an asshole and you do it, it doesn't mean you're clever. It just means you're an asshole.
It means you're twice the asshole.
Pretty much, yeah. It's like, not only do I have to deal with you being an asshole, but now I have to deal with you thinking you're a clever asshole. So, yes. I get, yeah. But Knives Out, I think, is very clever. I think it is very fun.
Yeah,
I don't know. It's funny because I can easily see how this is a witness. Because I'm kind of even questioning my own shiny and chrominess of it. But it's just so... So have you seen The Brothers Bloom?
No.
Okay, don't watch it. But that's the second movie Rian Johnson did, and it's kind of like this colorful European-influenced film where Adrian Brody and Mark Ruffalo go all around Europe conning people. Mm-hmm. And it kind of has, it's almost like Knives Out took the tone he was going for, and he kind of perfected it. He took the tone of The Brothers Bloom and sort of the attitude and the kind of laid-back atmosphere, the quirkiness of it, and he perfected it in Knives Out. And so that's probably another reason I liked it, and also because it was just a really tight movie. Like, there may be like 2 or 3 scenes where I'm like, I could do without that. But for the most part, it's pretty tight. The only thing that I wish there was more of was the supporting cast. I don't like how they drop out about halfway through.
Yeah, you know, even though some of their moments or some of their scenes are the most irritating.
Yeah.
Intentionally. All the topical shit that they're irritating for the topical crap, but if you take current events out of the picture and it's just the scenes of the family together interacting with each other and not the world outside of the movie, that's really entertaining. That's dynamite. Yeah. And yeah, I do wish there was more of that.
I also thought it was funny how Toni Collette was basically the Kmart version of Gwyneth Paltrow. I thought that was really funny. You haven't heard of my beauty line?
But it's true.
That's there were a lot of like little things like that where I was like, oh, that I like how they did that, or like how they have Go in there for some reason. Like, no one plays Go.
Yeah, no one plays Go.
Yeah, it's like, how would Ana de Armas know how to play Go? I don't know, but this
is like the second movie I've ever seen that references Go in any way. Every other movie just uses chess because everyone knows what chess is.
Yeah. But I think they needed Go because they're like, oh, she makes pretty patterns. That's how you know she's a good guy. So when she brutally causes the murder of Christopher Plummer in the second act of the movie, which, by the way, Christopher Plummer's, his American accent is fantastic.
Oh, it's great.
Yeah, I was kind of like, oh man, I could use more Christopher Plummer. I did think, though, that he was going to pop out and be like, hey guys, I'm still alive. Like, the whole thing is going to be sort of like a goofy hoodwink kind of thing, and like
I thought it was going to be like a hoodwink sort of thing, and that he's secretly a dick and wants like his whole family to just like eat each other.
That would have been a good twist too. Well, I actually, because the way that the movie was marketed, because saturation and everything like that, I thought it was going to portray Christopher Plummer as like a complete asshole, and it turns out he's just like a regular nice guy. And then
he's a nice dude.
And then I thought that Chris Evans was going to be in on some sort of like scheme that was going on, but it turns out Chris Evans was just in on his own particular scheme, which I liked a lot. It's good.
I just wish we had more Michael Shannon yelling.
Yeah.
I feel like you can never have enough Michael Shannon blowing up at people.
Yeah. Can we just have like a short movie of Michael Shannon as that character, just like going around managing his kids? Like, get off that! Wait, which one was his? His kid was the kid
son
from It, right?
Yeah, the kid from It.
The little the little neo-Nazi alt-right troll. Just a movie of him like repressing his need to yell at this kid. He's good. He needed to be in it more.
There were a few jokes, like when you're talking about Toni Collette's character, and like there's all this bit about her being an Instagram influencer, and then like her beauty line.
Yeah.
Like the jokes about that were just basically her one-liners felt so forced. I don't know why. It felt so just shoehorned into the conversation for me.
Yeah.
Or like when she's like, I saw a tweet about a New Yorker article about you.
Yeah.
It's like, oh my God, just stop.
Yeah.
We don't need to get this this doesn't need to be South Park, you know?
Well, I like that they like immediately cut to like Daniel Craig rolling his eyes like, why the fuck am I in this movie?
I also like that Chris Evans constantly calls out Daniel Craig's performance.
Horrible accent. Yeah.
It's like enough of your Kentucky Fried bullshit. Your Foghorn Leghorn nonsense.
Oh man.
I suspect foul play. And I have not eliminated any suspect. It's like, dude, come on. That's why I called him a steamed ham, because I mean everyone in the movie hams it up big time, but Daniel Craig, he takes it to a whole other level.
Yeah, but I feel like anytime Daniel Craig looks like he's having a good time in a movie, it just makes the movie that much better. Because like it's the same with Logan Lucky. Like he looks like he's having the time of his life and having so much fun, and like the movie is delightful to watch. And like that, there's the difference between Skyfall and Spectre. In Skyfall, he looks like he wants to be there. In Spectre, he looks like he wants to shoot Sam Mendes. So like I feel like if he is actively engaged, and I think I actually like him as a comedic actor. Like I think he has good comedic instincts. So like the fact that his accent is so over the top, I'm sure was one of those things that like he came to Rian Johnson. So Ryan, I was thinking of going full Foghorn Leghorn, and Rian Johnson's like, that is brilliant. You should definitely do that. And like I feel like that was one of those
your impression of Rian Johnson is pretty good.
Thank you. But I feel like that's something Rian Johnson probably leaned into, and like it's clearly a movie where subtlety is in very short supply, but the short supply that they use subtlety is used incredibly effectively.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean it's an entertaining mystery movie, and I know it aspires to be more than that, but that's really all it is, which isn't a bad thing.
No, I would rather them take the shot and swing for the fences and miss than never take the shot. So
yeah, well, and it's like, this Rian Johnson tried to hit a home run and hit a double.
Yeah.
There's worse. Like this could be this is a reasonably ambitious movie that has to settle for being a pretty good movie. There's extremely ambitious movies that have to settle for being giant disasters. So there's worse things have happened.
Well, I think it's a careful movie, because it could have easily tried to be a lot more ambitious and fail completely. But it's like, but he's done the really tight movie thing. He had Looper, he had Brick, so he knows how to make kind of a tight movie. I'm actually surprised they went outside of the house. I thought I thought a lot of things about this movie. I think kudos to the marketing team for like really just being very careful about how they release the information on this movie. Because there's like, I think when you watch it in the future and you're like, oh yeah, it's kind of like a whodunit, but it's not really. Like, it's going to be completely different than when you look at the marketing material.
The other thing, it's like, I haven't seen Brothers Bloom, obviously, so this movie seems weirdly out of character for Rian Johnson, even though it's very, like I said, very snappy and and kind of stylish. Because, like, you know, what I'm used to him doing is, like, Brick and Looper, which are just unrelentingly depressing.
Yeah.
I mean, Jesus, Brick is super depressing, especially because everyone's, like, a high schooler.
Yeah. But, yeah. No, it's weird. And also, even, like, with Looper, I know a lot of people who like it, and I like about like 80% of it, but, like, I really don't like the second half of it. But... like with Knives Out, with The Last Jedi, which got out of hand, it's like with Knives Out, he pulled a Spielberg. He looked at how Last Jedi got out of hand, and he was like, okay, how do I scale it back to still make it entertaining and still make it a pretty tight movie? Because it's a pretty tight movie. It probably could be a little bit tighter. The whole thing with like where they go on kind of I was going to say where they go on a tangent about the medical record thing. It's like, but it's a pretty tight movie. I like it a lot. It's like he went to try and hit a grand slam and instead he hit a home run. You know, that's how I feel. It's not going to win awards. It's probably not gonna make, you know, movie of the year. But it's solid. Yeah, I'll go with a double. It's a solid movie. I love it how we're mixing in baseball.
Trying to hit a grand slam and hit a double. He's trying to hit a grand slam and hit a home run, and I'm like, the first thing I thought is like, well, he can't control how many runners are on base.
Exactly. He tried to tie the game with one swing when they were down 19. No, it's a solid double. It's a solid double. Yeah. I liked it a lot, and it had that bit of extra to it too.
Also, I like that Frank Oz is in it, but is not a puppet.
Yeah.
And M. Emmett Walsh.
Yeah, I was gonna bring that up too. Yeah, I didn't even realize it was Frank Oz until the credits, and I was like, oh shit. And then I had to check.
Oh shit, that's what Frank Oz looks like.
Yeah, I thought that M. Emmett Walsh had passed away. I was like, hey, he's still alive.
It's kind of like how I thought he had passed away too, but it's kind of like how like Wikipedia said Rip Torn was dead for a long time, and then it turns out he wasn't dead, and then he died.
Yeah, it's weird how that happens. The Mandela effect, I guess.
I guess, yeah.
I could have sworn I saw an article though that M. Emmett Walsh had died, and this is his big coming out party. The guy who uses videotape. It's such a strange. The whole production design is really good, but it's also really strange because why are they still using cassette tape?
It's supposed to be evocative of those, you know, your library mystery books.
Yeah.
You know, when you go in and there's like 50 beat up copies that have just gone to hell and back of Agatha Christie and like Nancy Drew and all that shit.
Yeah. But still, the kid has a cell phone. The security system is on VHS tapes. He doesn't have any televisions in the house. Like, it's a little all over the place.
Don't think too hard about it.
No, I won't. I'll stop. Except that it wants you to.
Well, I mean, hey, that's what happened to me with The Last Jedi. It's like I watched The Last Jedi. I come out of the theater, it's like, you know, that was pretty entertaining. That was a solid movie. And then, like, the more I think about it, I'm just like, wait a minute. What the fuck?
The real Rian Johnson whodunit. Who did direct The Last Jedi, and why does it feel like a good movie and then a horrible one?
I've never had such a fast turnaround on a movie to where I come out of The Last Jedi, it's like, that was pretty good. And then 2 hours later, I'm like, I don't like The Last Jedi.
It's funny because I thought I wouldn't like The Last Jedi, and then the more I thought about it, the more I liked it. And again, it is also really weird that in order to sell this movie, they were like, we're going to say from the director of Looper, which is pretty well received, and The Last Jedi, which divided half the country. And then they're like, a Rian Johnson whodunit. I'm like, why are they putting his name all over this movie? Like,
well, I wonder if it's a Joker sort of thing where it's like they're trying to drum up a little heat around the movie, you know, like any press is bad, any press is good press.
Yeah,
you know, like because like the Joker, it's like, oh, it's dangerous and controversial. It's not. It's neither.
Not at all.
Neither dangerous nor controversial. It's pretty milquetoast.
It's a lot of Joaquin Phoenix dry humping the ceiling.
What?
Doing the hip thrusts at the end of the movie. I always think it's so funny how he's like dancing very lyrically at the end of the movie with his bloody shoes. He's like dancing lyrically, and then he'll just stop and start hip thrusting into the air, like that is the movie to me. Like, in a nutshell, that is the movie. It's like it wants to be this really lyrical dance number, but at the very end of the day, it's just a raunchy dance move. That's Joker review.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah, Joker review again.
Yeah.
How many? We should keep tabs on how many times we review the Joker over the course of us doing this podcast.
or how many times we use our rating system and then use baseball metaphors to re-rate the movie.
Yeah, no, it's a witness. Knives Out is a witness.
It's
solid witness.
Knives Out is a low, shiny, and chrome for me. We're the reverse. We've reversed the Irishman.
Yeah, I think so.
Whereas the Irishman is a double based off of an error.
It's a bunt double.
I was about to say that. It's a bunt single that turned into a double based off of an error that got Scorsese to third.
It's frickin' Ricky Henderson bunted to Prince Fielder, and that's got on second base.
And he's still holding the plate up. He's still holding that plate high. It's like, yep. Ricky Henderson or Martin Scorsese is the Ricky Henderson of filmmakers. Oh, man. Oh, maybe we've been recording too long.
I don't know. Let's see how obscure these sports metaphors can get. Because I don't know. Because at a certain point, you start naming specific... You talk about sports, you already start to lose a few people.
Yeah.
You start naming specific athletes, and you lose more people.
Yeah.
It's like, how far can we go to the point we're naming, like, baseball players that baseball fans haven't even heard of?
I think my most obscure... who is it? My favorite obscure player is Satchel Paige, who isn't really that obscure, but he's obscure enough that they don't have his pitching motion in MLB The Show.
Well, they used to have it.
They did.
A long time ago. They got rid of it.
They had it in one of those games, and I was like, yeah, Satchel Paige, bring him back. With the league that we can't say.
Yep. Well, I mean, you could start bringing up, like, players who were so old that they show up in the god-awful Ken Burns series.
Where they're just zooming in on the same photograph or zooming out to reveal the rest of the team. It's like, filmmaking 101. Let's reveal our subjects slowly. It's like it's pulling out on like Dennis Eckersley's face to show him like on a bridge that's burning as the Loma Prieta earthquake is going on. It's like
I think
filmmaking.
Eckersley is too new for that series.
He would be.
It's more like, Chief Bender in 1905 invented the slider, which was back then called the nickel curve because of blah, blah, blah. And it's like zooming out on this grainy photo of like a baseball stadium that hasn't existed for 80 years because it was demolished and replaced with like Section 80 housing or something. And it stays on this photograph, slowly moving the camera from one corner to the other for 5 minutes while some mustachioed old sports writer just waxes poetically about Chief Bender and his nickel change. Or whatever the fuck the first slider was called.
I don't know what's more depressing, what you just said or the fact that you've watched Baseball by Ken Burns.
Through no fault of my own, I have seen Baseball.
I knew you were a fan, Gabe, but please.
Well, it's just like, whenever I go to MLB Network during the off season, hoping to get like a news show, inevitably there is no news show. It's just Baseball from Ken Burns. I sit and watch it for 3 minutes hoping it won't suck. It sucks. Then I change the channel to like ESPN, which just sucks 24/7.
I'm gonna. Did you watch Film and Odyssey when it was on Netflix?
What?
I believe it's film. It's called Film and Odyssey.
No, I've never heard of this.
All right. If it's still on Netflix, you need to watch it. It's got a ton of great points, including the thing everyone always wanted, which is Gus Van Sant talking about his remake of Psycho. But among other things, like there's a lot of really interesting things in it. It's almost an entire film course in 12-hour-long episodes. But the guy who narrates it is this, like, he's either Irish or Scottish, and his favorite line is the wind and the trees, And he says it over and over throughout the series. It's the motif of the movie. These people who have...
The story of film, an Odyssey?
That's what it is!
Okay.
Yes. Is it on Netflix still?
I have no idea. I'll have to look.
It is very interesting, but also very... we can make fun of it. Yeah. We can make fun of it. On that note, is there anything... Do you have any other comments for Rian Johnson's... Rian Johnson whodunit's Knives Out starring Daniel Craig et al.?
Nope.
All right. Do you have anything else for this episode?
Not really. I mean, you mentioned to me something about the controversy with like Anna Paquin.
Oh yeah, I didn't
not talking enough or something. Like, I guess they're getting flack from the press now.
I guess so. There's an article. De Niro defends Anna Paquin's few lines in The Irishman, but I did not read the story.
I mean, it just reminds me of the stuff about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, where it's like, why doesn't Margot Robbie talk more? And then Quentin Tarantino, which is like one of the worst, just fucking gotcha questions ever. And then Tarantino's just like, I reject your hypothesis.
Yes. Well,
which is such a weird way of phrasing that answer. That it's like almost a non sequitur.
But it's so great because like it's such a Tarantino answer. Like
it is such a Tarantino answer.
That's so great. No, so this article I already take issue with because it says the most prominent female character in the movie, portrayed by Oscar-winning actress Anna Paquin, who won the Oscar when she was 11, speaks just 6 words in 10 minutes of screen time. But I would argue that there are other more prominent female characters.
Yep.
Like Jo Hoffa, who I think is
she's the most prominent female character.
She's the most interesting too, and her effect on her husband is great.
Frank Sheeran's wife.
Yep, she's got a lot of lines.
And young Peggy as a little kid.
Yeah, she's got a lot of interaction. That's why that's why the perplexing thing isn't Anna Paquin doesn't have enough lines. The perplexing thing is, why did you cast Anna Paquin in this role? Like, it doesn't matter who you cast.
Here's what I would say.
Yeah.
If I was Tarantino or Scorsese and I got one of these stupid questions from some stupid reporter who's trying to generate controversy for one of their stupid headlines, I would say, I want my movie to be the best movie it can possibly be. And every part, no matter how small, should be filled with the best actor possible for that role. So even though Anna Paquin doesn't say much, or even though Margot Robbie doesn't say much, her role in the movie is integral to the overall experience, and I wouldn't want to settle for anything less than the best, and these people are the best.
I agree with you for that for Margot Robbie. I don't agree with you with that for Anna Paquin. Anna Paquin with her, like, southern New Zealand drawl, faking an American accent. There's a better Peggy out there, but...
Well... who knows? But it's also weird that Anna Paquin plays Peggy as like a high schooler when she looks... I mean, she's like 45 now or something.
She's like 40, yeah. I know, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, well, they use the same de-aging technology on her face, I guess.
I don't know. All the aging is so messed up in The Irishman. It's hard to keep straight how old anyone is.
That's true, because when they first introduced De Niro, I'm like, oh, he's like 50, right? I think he's like supposed to be like 45 or something, or even like 35. I'm like, oh yeah.
They show him as a 24-year-old in World War II.
With the gut too. He's wearing the World War II outfit. He still's got a gut. I'm hoping they cast like a young actor to do that though. Like, that'd just be weird to have De Niro with his permanently bent right arm, like also holding the rifle and shooting them. It just seems weird.
It is weird.
For like a 20-second shot, just like put De Niro's face on someone. Do the social networking thing. Here's one thing I do want to say to end up the podcast. Mm-hmm. Like and subscribe to us on iTunes. Send us an email at underthewheelspodcast@gmail.com. Visit us at underthewheelsblog.wixsite.com/blog. Under the
Like
Wheels
us on Facebook and you'll find links to the website.
There you go. Leave us a message and rate us, because we would love to read them if if we ever check. We'd love to read the comments. I'm selling it. This is me doing my best to sell this. This is why I don't work in sales. I don't have anything else to say though.
Neither do I.
All right. Well, my name is Matthew.
I'm Gabe.
And you've just been Under the Wheels.
Should we do like a plug for the podcast that we can insert into the other episode, and also like catch Mike on the Goldbergs, or just not worry about it?
Probably not do the catch Mike on the Goldbergs because he's the stand-in. You wouldn't see him.
Well, he's a stand-in, so that means he or some part of him shows up on camera at some point, right?
Sometimes. Most of the time, the stand-in is just so that they can get the lighting correct.
Oh.
Yeah. Oh. He's not like the nude body double.
Oh, geez, the day the Goldbergs start using nude body doubles, that'll... I don't know if that's a world I want to live in.
No, not at all. That's the wrong kind of network television.
Ratings creep taken to a whole new level.
Sweeps week, damn it, sweeps week. We've got to keep it edgy for the kids. For the kids.
The kids who have, been watching internet pornography since they learned how to type and are desensitized to everything now.
But there's an age gate on it. There is? You think the kid can't just put in 1990 and get through? Like, really?
Or like most kids, or at least me when I was like 12, you just put in like, well, let me put in 1952 to be safe. I'm not just an adult, I'm really fucking old. All right.
Oh man. So, yeah, we should do but yeah, we should probably do a quick plug. I don't know exactly how we would start it though.
Nah, it's fine. Let's just not worry about it.
Okay, I'll figure out some way to put it in later.
Finished.